I don't recall ever speaking to the claimant loudly or in a disrespectful manner. I may have my pitch of my voice may have, and that normally happens when I want to emphasize something, or when I see a certain behaviors being adopted in a company. Then I may have said something to, but never in any disrespectful manner for anybody. And sorry, just to add, that's that's not my style. I've worked for a very long period of time. It can be corroborated with others as to what style of management I have.
And do you accept that you started routinely not replying to emails from the claimant at all?
I don't think there was any change in my approach. The only change was that when it was decided that Mr. Mahmood, we will not meet Mr. Mahmood especially for our key meetings. We will only meet Mr. Mahmood along with his supervisor in our meetings, and especially key meetings. The correspondence, I don't think there was any change in terms of my restricting or my emails conversation or my normal conversation with Mr. Mahmood.
The position here was as follows, was it not? First, you had seen previously the claimant's 365 feedback about Mr. Akbar the previous year. You agree that you'd seen that document, correct?
When I saw the document, when it came in my inbox.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Secondly, you knew from that document that the claimant was capable of giving strong, detailed, critical feedback about senior managers, correct?
Well, I mean, we all give opinions, professional opinions about people. We disagree on certain issues. If these are professional, there are times that we have a joint conversations if two people are having issues. But this was the first time that Mr. Mahmood actually put something like that for Mr. Akbar, and that's how it came on my desk.
And you knew that there were legitimate complaints that the claimant could, by April 2019, have about the way in which he'd been treated in the unit, didn't you?
I don't know what treatment he was referring to.
Well, specifically, you knew that one complaint he could legitimately make was about mockery of his accent, correct?
I'm not aware of it. As I said, had I seen that happening, I would have taken notice myself.
Another complaint he could legitimately make was at being shouted at and pressurized in meetings, correct?
As I said, I was the CEO of the business. Had I seen anything like that, I myself would have taken notice of that.
Do you not accept that in a meeting of the 14th of April 2019, on or around, Mr. Vasselli had walked out of a meeting because you had not allowed him to speak without interruption?
I don't know, I don't quite remember what that conversation or whether he walked out, but what I do recall that there were times that people were unhappy of how the conversations were were happening, how their point of view were not really understood, and all along I've always tried to manage, and I've always not tried, I've always managed, and that's how we've moved on. So if Mr. Vasily, I can't quite recall him walking out, but there had been incidents where other people were also unhappy about certain behaviors.
Put it to you that what happened in the meeting in question was that Mr. Vasily got up, started moving out, and you then persuaded him to stay, correct?
So as I said, if
2219.
2219, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Just while we're on this
Yes,
document,
please.
Mr. Sheikh, do you accept that within Group Islamic Banking, a lot of meetings are recorded, correct? I'm not saying that every meeting is recorded, but a lot of meetings
But
are
I
recorded.
think what I do recall that meetings like our Monday morning meeting or compliance meetings, the only reason why we started or why it was a practice that we recorded, because when the minutes would go out, there was a difference of opinion of who said what. So it was generally thought that, okay, fine, let's record the meeting, so there is less time spent in terms of looking at the minutes and then getting into a conversation and discussion that I didn't say that and I didn't mean it like that. So I don't recall that all meetings, with the exception of one or two meetings, it was not the practice.
And do you accept there isn't, can you point the court to a single recording or transcript of a recording in this bundle of any of the minutes, of any of these meetings that were recorded during the time relevant to this case?
I can't. All I'm just saying is that the key meetings, especially where there were conversations happening, they got recorded, but I don't know in the bundle.
And do you accept that you were concerned at the thought that the claimant had raised about you the type of concerns he had raised? Well, not the type of concerns, but were you concerned that the claimant had spoken up in a manner that put you under scrutiny?
Who had he spoken to? I don't know. Who had he spoken to? I mean, I'm not aware where something had gone about me, and whatever was talked about, we normally used to talk in very open terms, and I had a very good relationship with Adam and with Mr. de Groot, so if there was an issue that was brought to their notice, I was aware of it.
Doesn't that explain why the claimant had to speak up above Mr. de Groot and Mr. Long?
I don't know why he spoke up, so that is for you to assess. But I'm not even aware that he spoke up about Mr. de Groot or Mr. Long.
And when you say that you didn't know these things, can I take you to 2252? Now, this is not about the claimant's speak up. It's about the Islamic Banking BMA.
Yeah.
But here we see, don't we, an email from Mr. Mahmood to Mr. Cuss, 1st of May 2019, and again put it to you that you had been tipped off that there was going to be an Islamic Banking BMA.
BMA was a process run out of Singapore. Islamic, initially, prior to 2015, was always viewed as an area that the bank was not happy with. Post my joining, the senior management wanted to take a fresh look as to what the Islamic banking business is all about, how are we addressing the governance and control issues. BMA, Business Management Analytics, I think that's how what it's, and there was a separate team in Singapore. Without notice, they used to come visit us on our processes, on our systems. I probably had heard in Singapore or somewhere that the senior management may be looking at Standard Chartered Islamic to be one of the areas they want to review, and that's how it happened. So
it's extraordinary that this email gets sent the day before the claimant is due to speak with Mr. Cuss. Extraordinary coincidence, isn't it, Mr. Sheikh?
I don't know why Mr. Caspian spoke directly to Mr. Mahmood, in what capacity. Why was this email conversation not happening? Why did this email conversation happen between Mr. Caspian and Mr. Mahmood? I was not aware of it. As a business head, I'm the accountable executive, and the BMA started when I was advised. So I don't know what the background of this email is.
And that's an email of May. Stepping back to the 25th of April, paragraph 70 of your statement, this is at 7798. Now, this is about a conduct risk paper. The case I have to put to you is a very simple case here, Mr. Sheikh. It is that this conduct risk paper was not the reason why you, on the 7th of May, escalated matters to Mr. Long and complained to Mr. Long. The true position was that you were looking for a pretext to get the claimant out of the unit. Do you agree with that or not?
I don't know where this is coming from. The claimant worked with me till I remained as the CEO of Islamic, albeit in a more restrictive capacity when Mr. Adam Long was there. I worked very closely with the claimant right from the beginning. I was the one who was part of the interview process that we had with Mr. De Groot. He was the one who had actually helped put a structure around the compliance area. His relationship with the countries and setting up a compliance framework all around were all helping me to make a much stronger business and an entity across the globe. So there was nothing for me to, and even if you look at some of my statements, they say that I didn't want to really get into a speak up or complaining about anybody, because I wanted to continue to collaborate and get everybody on the same page. It is not my style. I don't like these conflicts that arise, and if there is a difference of opinion on how we conduct our business, let's discuss and resolve. So I don't quite agree with any pretext statement that counsel that you just made.
Page 7800, that's paragraph 78. You may need to work out the date, I believe, is given in paragraph 73, and then we have a series of things later that day. So I believe that paragraph 78 is the 7th of May. You say, I had a call with Mr. Long. I explained I was unhappy with the claimant's approach. I needed Mr. Long's help with resolving the issues. I expressed my frustrations. You can read it, yes?
Yeah, I read it. I read the statement.
2281, which you refer to. It's the email. Hi Adam, thanks for taking my call. As discussed, I look forward, this is at 10 o'clock at night, although there are time zone issues as ever. Thanks for taking my call. As discussed, I look forward to your leadership in resolving these issues. We have ambitious plans to grow this business, and these internal frictions are holding us back and becoming a constant irritant.
Sorry, we are on 2281, yeah?
2281, 7th of May 2019.
Yeah. me to respond to something?
Do you accept that in that call with Mr. Long, you made clear that you wanted the claimant out of the unit?
I think that it's even, if you read the correspondence, I mentioned that I was seeking help from Mr. Adam, Mr. Long, that constantly there are issues that they're taking a lot of management time, and we're not moving forward. My frustration was that we're not really working cohesively as a team, and there was too many conflicts going on every issue. So, and that's what I was referring to. The frictions that are holding us back and become a constant irritant.
Well, do you accept that on the 7th of May, you had called the claimant in and been very aggressive to him?
I don't quite recall the date, but yes, I may have had conversation with Mr. Mahmood, but aggressiveness or raising the tone is not my style. If I had, maybe I was a bit firm on how certain issues are dealt with, that's normal course of business. But I don't in any way recall any disrespectful or there was an agenda which was growing up.
Do you accept at least that Mr. Do you understand why Mr. Long took away the view that you had asked for the claimant to be replaced?
First of all, I never asked the claimant to be replaced. I had categorically told Mr. Long that it is becoming increasingly difficult for me to manage Mr. Mahmood and his relationship with the broader Islamic banking team. And that's where I sought his help to resolve. And that's why I requested him to be part of the meetings to ensure that there is less friction and more productive work that gets done.
And on the 16th of June, you're notified about by Ms. Dada about the results of her investigation. This is at 2485.
Yes, please.
Now, I'm not going to go through that with you, but can I ask you to look at 2182, please? I wanted to show you that document because that's the final report of June. 2182, we see a draft circulating within ER from Ms. Dada to Ms. Al-Najjar, Ms. Bajwa, Ms. Tabara. And we see that various things are upheld and not upheld. But then if we go to other findings, uh, 2184 near the bottom, other findings, third other finding, a recommendation was given by ER and SIS for an independent review to take place. This is again going back to the feedback on Mr. Sheikh.
Mr. Akbar.
Sorry, Mr. Akbar. Uh, 2185, we see the recommendations made by Ms. Dada in this draft report. Do you see 2184, first bullet point, regional COO to review the 365 feedback provided by SM to the CEO of Islamic Banking. So that's what's recommended now.
Sorry, 2184?
2184, first bullet.
Okay.
In other words, it's the same recommendation as before. There should be a peer review. Now, you won't. You were not copied into this email. Then we see 2477. This is another internal chain, Ms. Al-Najjar, Ms. Tabara, and we look at Ms. Al-Najjar's input. Did you share the report as a final report?
Sorry, as I said, I think I mentioned that I got a draft report.
Yes.
And then draft report, I requested for a conversation with Ms. Tabara, and maybe what I recall I called Mirna, but that conversation never happened. What I recollect.
Right, Mirna is Ms. Al-Najjar, correct?
That's correct.
What I want to put to you is that you first were told or knew that there was going to be a recommendation that the COO peer review occur. Is that true or not?
I think it was part of the report. There was a recommendation. If I can go back, please, then see. Because the report that came to me probably had that recommendation, the draft one. Do you know what?
Can the
If it
witness be
did,
taken back to the
So we were at 2182.
So if it had, then 218?
2182. You see, the point, Mr. Sheikh, is, in fairness to you, I should explain what I'm putting to you. You are not one of the people sent or copied into this email with this recommendation.
So then we should go to what was sent to me by Ms. Dada, I think, initially, as a draft report, or which one are we referring to? This is the one that
I can have.
So 2185 is a document circulated by Ms. Dada to ER.
okay.
But then we have 2234, which says that a revised report has been sent to Ms. Al-Najjar.
Okay.
The point here, just to make this clear, what I'm saying to you, what I'm putting to you, Mr. Sheikh, is that you have been told about this draft recommendation. You say that you don't want it in, and it is removed.
That's incorrect, because I was sent a draft report. I requested for a meeting. That meeting never happened, and then the final recommendations came. Where do I come in the middle?
2489.
2489.
You are now copied into this.
2489 is a plain document. It says Aziza.
Yes, sorry, 2488.
2488. Okay. 2488. Okay.
And what we see there is point 2 in red.
But
On
this is addressed to
2489.
Mr. Long.
Yes, that's
And
right.
then
This is an
it's copied to
exchange.
me,
It's an
yeah.
exchange between you're forwarded this on 2488.
Okay.
And what you're told there is, please note that assessing performance is considered to be out of HR scope in this case. Rayhan would be the best person to comment. I will be arranging a meeting to discuss. And then part 3.
Sorry, I'm on 2488. Where are you reading this, please?
2489
489.
Point 2,
Okay.
at the end in red.
And the red comments have been provided by Mr. Long, haven't they?
The red comments are from, it's unclear as to whether they are Ms. Dada or Ms. Al-Najjar.
Right.
But we can see Mr. Long's email
Oh,
in
yes.
black,
Mr. Long is in black, and then red is
and then we have red.
either from somebody in HR.
Yeah,
or
someone from HR.
Yep.
Assessing performance is considered to be out of HR scope. Rayhan would be the best person to comment. I will be arranging a meeting to discuss. Then we see over to 2490, where Mr. Long seeks a meeting between HR, him and you to discuss what's expected as line managers. He's been surprised by this investigation. Things are not okay. And he's told that there will be, and I think this is what makes me think it's Ms. Dada's email rather than Ms. Al-Najjar, because it says, I'll be booking a meeting for Rehan and yourself with Diana Myrna-Huda to discuss next steps, as I will be on block leave post the 4th of July. So, let's just deal with the following propositions. First, Ms. Al-Najjar is the Human Resources Business Partner for Islamic Banking.
That's correct.
She's also the head of ER in the region, correct?
Yeah, she was double hatting.
She would frequently be in your office, correct?
With prior appointments, frequent meaning under a plan that we had to talk about Islamic banking, and we asked. Yeah.
You were frequently seen together laughing and joking with each other, correct? You had a very strong relationship.
I have a business relationship.
Professional relationship. Position here, Mr. Sheikh, is that she would pass you news of whatever was happening in the unit that she knew about, correct?
Incorrect.
And when she removed the recommendation for a peer review, she was doing exactly what you wanted done, wasn't she?
I've never had a conversation with Ms. Najjar on either changing or what was in the report. I did send her, if I remember, an email or a conversation that I want to discuss this. Subsequent to that, a report was issued, which was issued to everybody, to the line manager, to the concerned people, and that's how we went forward with.
And
so,
at the end of June, you had also spoken to Mr. de Groot about the claimant, had you not?
more specifically with what I got.
You had told Mr. de Groot, this is the email, it's not an email to you, but I have to take it to you anyway, 2552.
This is between Mr. Long and Mr.
Yes,
Groot.
correct. And near the second hole punch on 2552, Rayhan has too much of it. And I must say we're really spending too much time on trying for ages now to get Shiraz to do a better job. So what's happened is you have made clear to Mr. de Groot that you want the claimant out of the unit, haven't you?
There was no conversation that we had where the submission was to take or replace Mr. Memo. It is not my job. My job is to run the business and the function. If there were issues, I would voice them to the seniors responsible. It was the seniors' responsibility to ensure that the working relationship or the coordination or collaboration improves. It is not my job. It was never my intention or what I said to replace Mr. Mahmood.
And in early July, there was a meeting between you, Ms. Tabara, Ms. Al-Najjar, and Mr. Long after Mr. Long returned from leave. Do you agree? Do you have any recollection of that meeting?
And what was discussed in that meeting, then I will remember it clearly.
One issue discussed was putting the claimant on a performance improvement plan. Do you remember that?
It was, I must have been advised, I don't quite recall, but if putting the claimant on a performance improvement plan is the line manager's prerogative and decision, and I'm sure it is based on the performance feedback that is given.
Another option discussed in the meeting was offering the claimant an MSA, mutual separation agreement. Do you agree with that?
I don't recall ever having a conversation on Mr. Mahmood or the claimant's MSA with me.
If I can take you to 4101. This is an email, to put this in context for you, this is an email of the 18th of February 2020 from Mr. Long to Mr. Groot and Mr. O'Donnell. You were not copied into this, but suggest to you that it is correct when it says at 4101 that you and Mr. Long discussed this with local HR/ER back in July, August, but were told that an MSA would not be possible. I suggest to you that that is what happened in the meeting we're discussing.
Well, as I said, the conversation throughout was that there was a restructuring going on in the compliance function. And what the new structures is going to look like was what compliance had to follow. And in that, if the jobs got combined, individuals had to apply, people had to be selected, whether there was an MSA for people to take that, it had nothing to do with, as far as I'm concerned. I was more concerned with who is going to provide the Islamic banking compliance support in this whole process.
Another option discussed in that meeting was a restructure leading to the claimant being put at risk of exit. Do you agree with that?
As I said, it was not my decision. If it was brought to my notice, it must have. It's some time ago, but I was neither a party to this conversation in terms of what the new structure will look like, or whether who's going to be the candidate. It was much later that the new structure and the interview process had started.
And we see that also early in July, you instruct the Sharia compliance department to stop copying compliance into emails, and you tell them not to meet with compliance too much. Do you agree that you did that or not?
Well, obviously, I will never make a statement not to meet, but in order for copying or involving, because we were having issues in terms of getting the work done effectively, we were relying more on country compliance and resources. We had I had set up a product forum where we said that we'll discuss a lot of issues in that product forum before they go out, just to create collaboration. If there was anything specific, the intention was not in any way to stop giving work to Mr. Mahmood, or if the work was getting impacted, it was in the normal course of business. So the intention was not to create more friction or more silos as we were operating in.
Can I take you to 2858, please?
Yes, please.
858. Can I invite Your Honour to read this email? First point, sorry, I'll just wait. Have you read the email?
Yeah.
You say at paragraph 43 of your witness statement, 7789, you say paragraph 43, line 7, this is going back to the same issue about the Sharia Department. In my view, therefore, it was very important that members of the Sharia Department reported to someone who was sufficiently senior and alive to their sensitivities. I considered myself the right person to deal with them. Now, what Mr. Mubin is saying here is that it is also pertinent to mention that Sharia Department is considered as an independent function within Islamic banking, but after the above COA instructions, I feel the Sharia Department's independence is in question. So he took this as an example of you, as his line manager, intervening in the relationship between Sharia and compliance, correct?
Well, obviously Mr. Mubin has written something, but it was never been my intention or I've ever said that this needs to stop, or if there are issues not to copy. I mean, this quote-unquote things are written, stop copying compliance. If there were maybe some issues that were going on which were country-related, there were other issues, I can't really say why this was said. But it has never been my intention. I've run that business for a long period of time, and I still, I don't think it's something that I categorically mentioned of keeping the compliance function out of it. Compliance is one area that I've always felt is an integral part of our business. Compliance, that's why we made that business so robust. If there were issues that were being asked, or they were being asked for them to be copied, maybe these were transactions that were being copied, and that's how the forum got established, where I said that there were too many things going back and forth, and to have a better coordination, I felt that it needs to be done in a very transparent way. Now, what Mr.
Mr. Sheikh, sorry, this isn't being done in a transparent way. What's happening is that you're going and you're giving a direction to Mr. Mubin to stop copying compliance into email, not to meet with them too much. That is the reverse of transparency, isn't it?
I've never followed anything like this, so if this is being written by Mr. Mubin, what he took of my instructions, what I said, I don't quite agree with what was written, but I presume that if Mr. Mubin has written it, the intention or the conversation could never have been that not to keep the compliance function involved, or stop writing emails.
And Mr. Sheikh, what's going on here has to be looked at in the round. You're having a meeting with ER discussing an MSA or a performance improvement plan or a restructure. Yeah? Within days of this, you're instructing Sharia not to deal with the claimant. The reality is that what you are doing is trying to get the claimant out of the unit. Do you agree or disagree?
I disagree because there's a history to how it got to a July 2019 level. There have been various other steps that have been taken in terms of the conversations that I've had with Mr. Long, how Mr. Long's engagement has been in the Islamic banking business, or how we have established the product forum to make a business more seamless. So it's not in isolation. And as I said, the MSA, it's my job is to get the compliance function support entirely to my business, and that's how. Now, what MSA has to do with me, or who the right person is, that's more to do with the function that's responsible for this.
And page 7805, you refer to a meeting of the 5th of August.
Paragraph number?
101, 102, 103, 104. So 7805 to 7806. Now, you say at paragraph 102, 3 lines from the bottom, the claimant was incensed. There were further exchanges of the Sharia reporting line before the claimant interrupted me and said to me, etc. First of all, can we be clear about this? This is a meeting. You agree that the claimant didn't shout in this meeting. Do you agree with that?
I don't recall what the tone was.
Put it to you that the claimant was dialing into this meeting from his dentist, so it's unlikely that he'd have been shouting at you down the phone, isn't it?
Well, I think the tone probably that was used, shouting or a high pitch, was something. I think I found the tone was very disrespectful, and the content that was said.
And this meeting was not recorded, correct?
I don't recall.
Put it to you that there was no outburst from the claimant, was there?
What I recall was the tone was harsh, and more importantly, the content that was said was quite disrespectful in terms of the seniority of the people, and including myself, who were present in that meeting.
And the position was that this was yet another discussion about the Sharia issue, correct?
That's correct.
And
well, sorry, can I interrupt, please? If the discussion was that this was what the recommendation or the draft, I think, of BMA findings were, and we said, well, the final, I think if I remember correctly, the draft, it was a BMA vindicated position, meeting findings, and agree on action points. So it was more of findings, action points, and we agreed that if this was the BMA's recommendation was to put the Sharia function outside the purview of the CEO, that's what we had agreed, and that's the stance that we've taken all along.
What's happened is that the BMA, it's not the stance you've taken all the way along. The position was you had sought to maintain the reporting line to you, and the BMA review has now come back and said it should go into compliance. Do you agree with that summary?
So the review, prior to the review, also it had been extensively discussed, and we said, okay, fine, if post 2020 rule approval from DFSA, if this is how we've been operating, and as more and more senior people also got involved, and they felt that yes, there is a conflict of interest that's there, ultimately it was bank's decision to take it out. Now I have my own opinion, I had my own opinion along with senior members of the management team, where we felt that the risk is manageable, and how we've got the Sharia Supervisory Committee, how we've got other areas sorted out, we've never had a problem. Now if this, in terms of an evolving business environment, if this is an area that's come up for conversations that needs to be amended, it got amended.
Now, on the 6th of August, Mr. Mahmood raises with Mr. Martin and Mr. Bucket, sorry, Mr. Ayrton and Mr. Bucket, the email at 3012 to 3.
Sorry, I need to go to the document.
3012. 3012 to 3013 is the document that goes over the page. So he to start with, finds that it unusual that there was a meeting, given that he'd said he had no feedback. And then he says here, following the meeting, Sahel Akbar went to Alessandro Vasselli and told him to tell his friend, referring to me, that I was behaving inappropriately. Sahel told Alessandro to tell me that he knew how to deal with British people, even if they'd been masters. I think this may have been a reference to British colonial rule. Alessandro advised Sahel that he and I were not friends but professional colleagues, and that part of the objective set by him, by his line manager, was to align and work with Islamic banking compliance. I'm raising this for reasons: unusual, implied threat. 3, race, nationality, gender have no bearing upon their work. Is not acceptable in the workplace. Do you agree with that proposition? Do you agree with his proposition 3?
Well, I was not in that meeting, and I was made aware that some comments were made, but that's about all.
When were you made aware of that?
I think either following that conversation or following that meeting, because I was not in the room. I was told that some conversations happened between Mr. Akbar and I think Al, and that's about all. And I think subsequent to that, I heard that later on that I think it went into a detailed assessment.
Well, we can see that at pages 3007, what we see is that Mr. Bucket forwards this email from Mr. Mahmood on to Ms. Al-Najjar, Ms. Tabara, Carolina Bassi and Ms. Dada. Caroline, I realise you've been limited awareness as we've been primarily speaking with Mirna, that's Ms. Al-Najjar, as the Employee Relations Business Partner for Islamic Banking. However, I'm happy to give you an overview. And then it says the matters have been reached. 1. A comment was made to Shiraz by Manu Group saying if he cannot appropriately manage it, he may have to re-advertise. 2. Concerned that Project ICE will be used to remove him from his position. 3. Mr. Long has mentioned there might be changes to his role. And then it says 4. See the email below from Shiraz regarding comments by Sahel Akbar to Alessandro Vasselli. We're concerned about the content of these comments, which should be looked into by ER. We've not spoken to Shiraz, Sahel, nor Alessandro. Then Ms. Dada replies on 3007. Happy to have a call on my return to on August the 20th. Now,
sorry, where is that when Ms. Dada responded?
3006.
Okay.
That's the 8th of August. Now, on 3134. We see your email to Mr. Long of the 15th of August. And you say second last page, as agreed, I would not like to engage HR at this stage, since this would again take valuable time away for another investigation, something we've already gone through. Just pausing there, that investigation you've already gone through is the investigation into the grievances made against the claimant in January 2019. Is that correct? Is that what you were referring to?
I don't recall what the context was.
And you then say, I would nevertheless request that you advise my reservations to the officials of the team who've recently conducted the detail review. And then at 3133...
Councillor, I just want to make a point here, Judge. The intention has always been not to go into investigations and all, more to sit down if there are issues out there, rather than going into extensive debates and investigations. Things were directed to me, things were directed to all across, but the intention was never to, in any case, create more issues. And that's why my second last paragraph says that I don't want to engage HR at this stage and going through another series of investigation.
Now, up the page, we see on 3133, Mr. Long says, in terms of any comments you wish to provide the HR team that conducted an investigation following the Speak Up edit this year, I will leave it to you to update them directly, as I would not wish to risk... Sorry, this is on 3133?
Yeah.
I will leave it to you to speak with them directly, as I would not want to speak for you and risk misconveying your points. And then we see up the page an email from you to Ms. Al-Najjar, Salam, can we please have a chat? And that's on the 2nd of September. Now, we then see that this is forwarded to Ms. Tabara on the 3rd of September by Ms. Al-Najjar without any comment. Did you speak to Ms. Al-Najjar about this issue?
I don't quite recall whether I had a conversation with Ms. Najjar.
Later that week, sorry.
I don't quite recall, sorry.
Later that week, we see 3247. Ms. Tabara, I'm writing 3246, bottom of 3247. I'm writing in reference to strictly confidential review not against Shiraz to suggest that Shiraz works temporarily on the compliance floor, considering the stressful environment on the Islamic floor. And we then know that you're told at 3256 that Mr. Mahmood has been moved off the Islamic banking floor.
In this video, we are going to learn how to say.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was told, but I think if you read the emails, that was a conversation between Ms. Tabara and Mr. Adam Long. Sorry.
3256. Sorry, I should go back to 3247 was where we were at. 3247. So there's, sorry, my computer has now had a problem. No, dear. But just before that. Okay, well, so we have Ms. Tabara suggesting a move. And I put it to you that what's happened here is that it's only late in August that you raised these issues with HR. And by these issues, I specifically mean the issue of the claimant's conduct in the meeting of the 5th of August.
So you're talking about Mr. Mahmood's move to the compliance floor?
No,
This was a decision that Mr. Adam Long and they took, and I was advised. So
what I'm putting to you here, I don't want there to be any ambiguity, Mr. Sheikh. What I'm putting to you here is the following. It is only after HR know that the claimant has made a complaint of race discrimination. It is only after that happens, and after there is then an exchange between you and employee relations, that any action is taken to discipline the claimant for what he said on, or is alleged to have said on the 5th of August 2019. Do you accept that as chronologically correct?
No, it is incorrect. I'm there to point out the issues that were happening in my business. If there was a disruption, it was the line manager's responsibility and the department's responsibility to address.
And after you, well, first of all, put it to you squarely, you were told by employee relations about the claimant's complaint about what Mr. Akbar had said.
I don't quite recall or recollect who said this to me first or what was said, but I don't quite recall whether it was said to me soon after the meeting or when it was said later on. I can't quite recollect.
And you knew that the essence of his complaint was that a racially tinged threat had been made to him.
No, I did not. I don't quite recall exactly what was said or what the intention was, in what context this conversation had happened.
And after this happens, we see retaliatory action taken by ER, including, to start with, moving the claimant out of the Islamic banking floor, correct?
No, as I said, it had nothing to do with any incident that had happened. It has been happening over a period of time. Maybe it was, by the way, it's not uncommon for support functions to sit on the floors that their regional offices are. Al had a desk on the legal floor. If compliance has a desk on the compliance floor, it's a very normal thing to do. And Al also had a desk on Islamic floor, and so did Mr. Mahmood. So it's I didn't see too much of a. But what it's written, I'm concerned about his well-being as well as to reduce unnecessary noise. So it was their assessment as to how they want to deal with it.
And we then see that on an investigation report into Mr. Mahmood is produced in draft. And can we turn please to 3291? So what we says is, it says Mr. Mahmood was aggressive and provocative, which we don't accept. And then 3292, on the other hand, Mr. Sahel's behaviour may raise concerns that it is viewed as discriminatory towards his colleague. Although Mr. Sahel's claimed that the purpose of the message was to request Mr. Shiraz to act professionally, which was similarly understood by the witness, the selection of his words and the reference to British nationality could be viewed as discrimination. So it doesn't seem really there's much denial of what's actually been said, is there?
Well, you have got an investigation report which is assessed that.
Well, we then see at 3341, so sorry, that is partially upheld at 3292, is that verdict. Then we have 3341.
3341.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we see 3340 over to 3341. Ms. Al-Najjar saying, can we discuss on Sunday? I thought Shiraz was supposed to go through DM. So I put it to you what that suggests. I know it's not your email, but I'd put it to you that what that suggests is that Ms. Al-Najjar had planned for the claimant to be put through a disciplinary process.
You need to ask them as to
Well,
what the process is.
Mr. Sheikh, don't be. The truth of the matter is, we've seen an email from you to Ms. Al-Najjar earlier in September, asking you to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Are you seriously telling this court that it was not agreed between you that the claimant would be put through disciplinary management?
I categorically deny that.
And we also see Ms. Al-Najjar at 3341. Also on Sahel, who other than Alessandro said the British piece, and did Sahel admit to saying British? And then we see 3350. We see another draft of the report. And at this stage, we've got at 3351 in the middle, we've got an upheld. And then up the top, you say, thanks for the mail, I'm in an RMT all day, however, would like to discuss this with you later in the day if convenient or on Sunday. And then we see, so you accept that you were involving yourself in the finalisation of this draft report, weren't you?
Well, the report has been sent to me. It is expected for me to have a conversation on the contents of the report. It's addressed to Mr. Bara, who's done the investigation in the report. It's not addressed to anybody else. So having a conversation that was the intention, to send a draft.
And what's happening here?
I'm only suggesting, because I'm an RMT, that's why I requested that we can have a conversation later on.
And we see at 3371, after further review of the incidents, the report is amended to consider the new findings, and we go down, and what we see, there are so many drafts here, I'm not sure which one we've got to. This is what 3374. Sorry, 337. Are we at 3371?
Yes.
I think one has to keep going down. So 3371. Yes, here we go. sorry, what I had taken you to at 3374-2 was the old draft, and then we see the new draft, 3374. And we see the recommendation on 3377 has changed to disciplinary management for Mr. Shiraz on the basis of the undermining style adopted against senior colleagues, decide on ways of working to address the long-standing conflict, and it is also said, we can see further up on 3377, on the other hand, in issues of concern, the finding about what Mr. Akbar has said is reversed. So what's happened here, Mr. Sheikh, is that after the interventions of you and Ms. Al-Najjar, the recommendations and conclusions of this investigation have changed, have they not?
It's absolutely incorrect.
Well, I don't see how you can. I mean, how can you? We've been through these documents. You've seen how they've changed.
Councillor, the documents are right in front of you. These are independent areas. People of responsibility are managing these investigations. It's addressed not just to me. It's addressed to the line managers and addressed to the HR manager also who looks at it. I don't think then there's anybody who can influence an outcome in our organization who can influence or an outcome or have the report changed.
Well, I put it to you, Mr. Sheikh, specifically that you are such a person and you did succeed in doing that, didn't you?
I'm sorry, but that's a very harsh statement that you've made. I'm a very, very responsible and senior person of Standard Chartered Bank, and that is, I absolutely disagree with the statement that you've made. I've got 41 years of banking experience. I've worked for very, very responsible organization and banks. This is not a statement that I appreciated, and I don't think that's a correct statement.
Is your position then that you have no idea why this report changed?
As I said, the report is in front of you. I'm not the one who drafted the report or did the investigation. So you have to speak to the people who were behind in the investigation process and produce the report.
3433. You see a long email chain going down to 3434. Mr. Long seeks a permission to make a change in the Islamic banking compliance space. And it says here that he had discussed this proposal with the group head Islamic banking. So is it true that Mr. Long had spoken with you about restructuring the Islamic banking compliance function?
Any change that directly impacts the functions and businesses as a key stakeholder is discussed. So this probably also got discussed, and a broader action plan was was agreed upon by the function in the department to ensure that the business that we have, the responsibilities that we have, are properly addressed. So what happened had more to do with the compliance function in terms of how the process went forward.
Put it to you that the simple answer here is that the claimant has been earmarked for removal as part of this restructure because of the fact that you wanted him out of the bank.
Well, it's not one single person. I think for the last since Mr. Mahmood had been working with us, as things had progressed, as the collaborative approach was not being adopted, as the business was not really benefiting from his engagement as a senior compliance officer globally. So if the function feels that there is, and then the function is looking into a restructuring of how they want to do and they want to combine the job, I'm a little surprised how you're singling out whether it is because of this that the bank decided to do it. These are broad policy and global decisions that happen in terms of structures.
Well, you say that, but actually what 3434 makes clear is this isn't to do with a global structure, because what it actually does is it seeks a permission for this restructure to go ahead, even though the wider organisational change is on hold.
If there is an impact by people leaving, by people being added, by jobs being combined, it's always a collective conversation that happens. So I, as a senior member of the management team, was advised that this is what we are looking at. This is how probably it will unfold. It never talks about people. It talks about how it doesn't say it's Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C. It talks about what the structures, and I think what they were trying to combine 3 jobs and making it a different level. And this is how it moved forward.
And when you say people are not mentioned, 3269, well, let me just take this shortly. Are you aware that there is a threshold of 30% change in a role before it is before the holder of it is put at risk? Were you aware of that threshold in the bank?
I don't quite recall 30%, but if you're saying that that's the policy, then I presume will be a correct statement.
No, don't take it from me. If you don't know, you don't know. 3269, we see that Mr. Long explains that there's a 40 to 50% change. Now, a lot of the next email exchanges don't involve you, but I'm just going to put this to you now. First, we see that the initial agreement at that stage, the initial position, we can see at 3455, and this is an email from Ms. Al-Najjar of the 7th of November 2019.
3255.
3254 to 5, it spans the page. It's confirmed that the new proposed role is a new role with more than 30% of change. The current role SM is in will be considered redundant and he will soon be served with an at-risk letter.
Sorry, this is between Diana and
Yes.
Shiraz, yeah?
Simple. No, it's because it's between Mirna, Diana, and HR. But can I simply ask, were you aware that he was going to be sent a redundancy letter at that stage? With regards to his 2019 performance appraisal,
2019.
Did you give oral feedback to Mr. Long about that performance appraisal?
It's normally I give a written feedback. Normally, I give a written feedback. So I don't recall whether I gave an oral, and if I had given an oral, then it would have been a combination of whatever was going on, how things were being handled. It's something that we've talked about it for the last few hours. And I think my emails were good feedbacks as to how we were progressing on the working relationship.
The reason I ask you is that Mr. Long at 3711 of the bundle, it says here 3711 email to Ms. Al-Najjar. This rating is based on my assessment that he has not completed all objectives and based on the verbal feedback of key business stakeholders. And there is no written feedback in the form from either you or Mr. Akbar. So my question is, did you give Mr. Long verbal feedback?
As I said, I don't recall, and I'm sure it's natural that for senior officers we do have a conversation. So that conversation must have happened, but I can't quite recollect whether there was a written feedback or a verbal conversation.
And your feedback was strongly negative, wasn't it?
My feedback is always very, very objective in terms of what the 4 or 5 things, that what is this employee vis-a-vis the objectives that there are, how is he progressing, what value is he adding, and where are the development areas. And it's this is how my feedbacks have always been for everyone.
And did you know that what's happened is that Mr. Mahmood is given a 4D rating? Were you aware of that?
If Mr. Mahmood was given a 4D rating, it would have been brought to my notice, and it would have been. I can't quite recall what document I saw. Maybe normally in the assessment sheet, when we look at the bonuses, when we look at pay increases and all that, that's where ratings get consolidated. And but because Mr. Mahmood, I was not the line manager, that information must not have come to me, but I'm sure it must have been mentioned to me.
And the position is, Mr. Sheikh, it's extraordinary for Mr. Long to rely on verbal feedback alone to give a 4D rating. Do you not agree with that?
No, we do give verbal feedbacks also. I mean, it's...
and I put it to you that what's going on here is very basic, which is, again, you want him out of the unit, and Mr. Long is giving you what you want, correct?
In the last a couple of hours, we've not come out or really seen anything where there has been a direct conflict that I've had with Mr. Mahmood. And I've tried to manage things, so that's why we continue to operate. But there has never been my intention, had the working relationship, if the working relationship had improved, if things had been being done in a manner where it is less destructive and more constructive, and the working relationship between people had done, there was no reason. right from the outside, he was very, very involved and a very, he was doing great stuff.
And at 4101, we see an email of February 2020, 18th of February, from Mr. Long to others, Mr. DeGroot, Mr. O'Donnell. I just want to take you to this specific bit. He explains on 4101, paragraph 3.
Paragraph 4.
3. It's the one that begins, I explained to Emma. I told her I did not think it made any sense to work with Shiraz, HR and Rayhan on a PIP targeting implementation of way of working and stakeholder relationship, when in fact the key stakeholders in the business are not going to accept any outcome other than a change in staffing. And you were one of those key stakeholders, weren't you?
I've always been the key stakeholder.
And you had Mr. Long had been told by you that you wanted the claimant out. I put the allegation to you again.
As I said, I have never had a conversation with Mr. Long which to say that I want him out. When we say things are not working, then it is the responsibility of the department to make changes, to make sure that the working of the department functions. Now, if Mr. Long felt, and he may have said to me that he will change Mr. Shiraz for another person, in line with what they were going on to do the restructuring, it may have been mentioned to me. Or maybe at that point in time, given what we had been experiencing, it was probably the best solution for everyone to move on.
We then have the pandemic, and then in June 2020, there is an offer made to the claimant of an MSA, a mutual separation agreement. Simple question here. Were you aware that this was being done?
I was not a part of the process. But if an MSA was done, or maybe it might have been brought to my notice, this is before the appointment of the new person, or this is after that?
This is June 2020.
So I was still in Dubai in June 2020. It may have been mentioned, but I was not a part of any conversations that were happening between the function and HR or Mr. Memo.
Yes, but were you aware of them?
I can't recall.
Page 4451, 19th of July. The MSA is not accepted. And then it says, Ms. Tabara, again, this is not an email into which you copy, but I have to put this to you. Did you know that the claimant was going to be made redundant?
Nobody specifically mentioned that to me. Somebody may have mentioned, but not from an official. They may have, no, I don't recall any conversation that I've had with anybody in terms of a redundancy.
And I put it to you that his eventual dismissal was a foregone conclusion. It was not a genuine redundancy dismississal.
I can't comment on that. That's a process that the bank may have followed, but I was not a person involved with such conversations.
Well, you were involved in the sense that you sat on the interview panel, were you not?
I did.
And you say that paragraph 162, page 7820.
162
on page 7820.
7820, yeah.
You say the claimants, well, this is our feedback, that's you and Mr. Long, so we can see that from paragraph 160. You interviewed the claimant. We went through the feedback with Mr. Long. Two questions. First, do you accept that the interview feedback that you give is extremely negative. Now, can you help us with this, Mr. Sheikh, because it's not an established fact, so I'm going to just put this to you. 4616 and following are a series of interview sort of notes.
Yeah.
I'm being summary. And then we see a series of scores here. And different pages have different people's names highlighted. That may be who is asking the questions or who is doing the scoring. Do you recall whether these are your own scores? For example, on page 4620.
I remember these scores.
So are they also your input as well?
Assessment, yeah.
Correct. So nearly there. Sorry, I'm just thinking. I'm just going to keep going and finish. I'm going to get done.
How much longer do you think?
15 minutes now, because I've got to go through these, but I'm going to be brief. 4619. Outside of this 4619, outside of this, the interview, my experience with Shiraz mirrors his statement in the interview that he never holds back. I accept that he sees this as a benefit, but in practice his approach to challenge has not always been constructive and effective. So this is wording that you work through with Mr. Long, or that he drafts up, but it reflects your input. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we look at the next, so that is met with development. That's number 3 of 5. You'd accept that that is a mediocre score, correct?
That's correct.
4620. In my experience outside of the interview, Shiraz's courageousness to challenge is to be respected and valued. He hasn't been able to find a consistent way of doing it conclusively. Constructively. Now, it looks like Mr. Long's input, but I think we accept, well, it is accepted that you have factored into this.
Sorry, do you agree with that, Mr. Sheikh?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I agree.
4621. And we have input from Sahel about his team members being frightened of dealing with CFCC. He adapted his approach based on this feedback. Now, but just on this issue, it is not the case, is it, that Mr. Mahmood created some kind of culture of fear within Islamic banking? It's simply not true, is it?
Well, when you say culture of fear, I think there was the disconnection in terms of people working in a collaborative approach, people feeling easy to discuss client issues, product issues, getting things done. It was not an easy working relationship that Mr. Mahmood had, especially with people that he used to interact on a regular basis, and that's what created this disconnect. Now, whether you call it fear or whether you call it, minding your own business because you don't want to really get into a friction, you don't want to, engage. It was not good.
And
it
says
was not
here,
just one incident. It was it's 4 years of work that had gone in.
and when it says he adapted his approach based on this feedback, it seems to be acknowledged there that if there had been a problem, that problem had ceased to exist. Do you accept that?
Ceased to exist, meaning?
He adapted his approach based on this feedback. I put it to you very simply, Mr. Sheikh, that this idea that the claimant has created some kind of fear culture in this unit is completely misplaced.
As I said, it's not misplaced. It's just the working relationship was not good. The environment on the floor, the environment within the country's people was not good. We had an issue on every issue, on everything. So that's what, and people adapted to a working on alternate solution to get their work done rather than going through a very senior and responsible compliance head.
4623. You say, it again says, in terms of gaining trust of the business he currently supports, this is something he has just not been able to do over the past 2 years. And I put it to you that the bottom line that this document keeps coming back to is the relationship between the claimant and the unit, correct?
Yes, I presume that's what Mr. McCarthy is referring to.
Well, Mr. McCarthy doesn't have experience of Shiraz working in the unit, does he?
But I'm not the one who's written this comment here, so. The position simply is that this interview panel process is a surreal exercise, isn't it? Because the outcome has already been determined. The position was that you, Mr. Long, Mr. de Groot, had all agreed that he was leaving the bank, correct? I think there were all other senior members of the bank who interviewed a very, very senior member, 2 senior members for this process. So there is, that's a very incorrect statement. That's why the process gets followed. That's why we've got different people in different seniority levels interviewing a managing director level individual.
And the position is there was no logic at all in combining the role the claimant had been doing with the role in financial markets compliance. There was no logic at all to that.
I think that's the best person to ask that question is Tracy McDermott or Mr. de Groot and Mr. Long. Because we combine functions, we combine businesses in terms of how best we can manage.
And what happens is that we end up with the claimant going against Mr. Patel, Zunaid Patel. Now the position is that you accept that the claimant had worked in financial markets advisory. He'd worked in an FM role, correct?
I was told when I met Mr. Mahmoodin and when the interview process was going on, that's what I was told, that Mr. Mahmood worked for financial markets, and prior to that he worked with a bank and had the Islamic experience. That's why he was shortlisted for the final interview.
And by contrast, Mr. Patel has no experience to speak of Islamic banking, does he?
Mr. Patel came out as a much better candidate in terms of his knowledge, his people skills, his ability to, from a collaboration perspective, and that's how, and Islamic banking, I can't quite recall what, whether he had some knowledge or not, but he came out as a better candidate. So our job was to recommend for the next level interviews who we thought was the right candidate.
And when you say the decision was unanimous,
I didn't say that the decision was unanimous.
7821.
By the panel.
So it's a unanimous decision, correct?
Yeah.
And that you and Mr. Long are critical in that decision because both of you give negative feedback of a strong nature about the claimant, and it would have been extraordinary for any panel to agree with him staying on in the face of your strongly negative feedback. Do you agree with that?
I disagree because the panel sheet, the interview sheet clearly talks about his courageous approach as far as I'm concerned. It talks about a lot of other things, but it is for the interviewers to judge who may have or may not have background or knowledge of who they think is the right candidate. It's just my vote is one single vote, or Mr. Adam Long's. I think it is for the bank to decide who the right candidate is.
And integral to your negative feedback was your response to complaints of mistreatment and discrimination that the claimant had made about his time in the unit, correct?
No, I don't know what you're referring to, which document you're referring to. Can you help me see that document where in an interview panel or my sheet? Or
no, you don't refer to that on your sheet, Mr. Sheikh, but do you not accept that having gone through the bundle, this is a case where the key decisions are being made in phone calls between you, Ms. Al-Najjar, Mr. Long, Mr. de Groot, and those phone calls aren't a matter of speculation. We see a series of contemporary emails referring to them, and we see things done after them, don't we?
Councillor, this is your opinion, but I've categorically already said that there is no such thing, what you just mentioned.
And the reasons why the Islamic banking senior management team react so strongly and so negatively to the claimant included the fact that he was a British Asian.
I don't think that has anything to do with his background or his nationality or his being British Asian. To be very honest, it never came up as far as I was concerned. This conversation has never happened where we looked at him in any way different. Our approach was he had, Mr. Mahmood had a job to do, we had a job to do. We were just moving on how best to collaborate and deliver on our mandated objectives. Now in that, if there was a difference of opinion, if there were conversations that did not go well, all along, the atmosphere, the environment under my leadership still was very good. We maintained, we resurfaced as a unit which was a global leader in Islamic finance. So if there was things that were not working well, we had to address to ensure that the journey that we had embarked on delivers. And that's what we did.
But in terms of the journey of Mr. Mahmood's career, there is not a shred of evidence from the bank here that anywhere else he has worked, and he is a senior and experienced figure, there is no evidence here from the bank that anywhere else he's worked, even within the bank, there have been the kind of problems that we see in this bundle.
I cannot answer that question, so I don't have.
And it's also the case that Mr. Vasselli makes a number of complaints, has a very difficult time, but Mr. Vasselli isn't subject to anonymous complaints, is he?
If you give me a few minutes, Mr. Vasselli had been working for Islamic finance for some time. It was me who set up a legal framework so that he could be embedded globally. he could be part of the global legal setup, and his acceptability. He had 7-8 lawyers working with him, which was not the case before. We had Mr. Andrew Dixon taking full responsibility. It was all my initiatives. So Mr. Vesely may be working well, and maybe he had a better relationship, but if there were any issues, I think they were probably addressed alongside with his stakeholders.
But the issues aren't addressed, are they? We've seen Mr. Vesely threatening to leave a meeting, so, some years into this story.
There are times, Councillor, that heated arguments happen. We're running a business. We're running a global business. There could be difference of opinion. You can get distracted or upset about it. But was Mr. Vesely called back? Did he stay back? Did we move on? We moved on.
And the point is that with the claimant, you don't move on. And the difference, I put it to you, is connected with his racial status.
That's incorrect. We ensure that the claimant remains, Mr. Mahmood remained integral part of our setup. He was a very, very responsible person on which the global Islamic coordination for compliance depended on. There is no way, there's no evidence that we in any way belittled or undermined his position. It is, as we went along, the difference of opinion on matters started to get more and more frequent, but even then, I as a CEO was responsible to ensure that we maintain a very strong working relationship.
Your Honour, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Beckford-Smith. Mr. Sethi, do you re-examine?
Thank you, Your Honour. I have no questions of re-examination.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sheikh. That completes your evidence.
Thank you, sir.
You are still subject to one obligation, though, I'm afraid, as a result of these proceedings, and that is the obligation not to speak to any other witnesses of the bank who are yet to give their evidence. I suspect the bank's lawyers have told you about that. Presumably they've also told you who those witnesses are. So until they've given their evidence, which will be completed by the end of this week, you're not to talk to any of them. But otherwise you're free to go, and there's no longer any obligation for you to remain in court or have anything to do with these proceedings.
Thank you,
So
Judge.
thank
What
you for your
about
assistance.
my interaction with my...
You can speak now to the bank's lawyers if you
Okay.
wish. There's no impediment to that.
Thank you.
All right. So thank you. Is this a good time to adjourn?
Thank you, Your Honour. Mr. Akbar has been waiting patiently this afternoon to get on, but we'll now start with him tomorrow morning.
Yes, all right. And we're confident we can finish both him and Mr. Bucket tomorrow?
Yes, I was planning to get started on Mr. Akbar today, but especially as we've been waiting here, but it is, I recognise, 10 past 4.
Well, do you think...
Can I just look at the child timetable? I have it up on my screen. It's in a corner.
Well, it's interesting, though, there's some reason there's a 2-hour lunch allowed for tomorrow, which struck me as odd. But
So tomorrow is day 7, and my recollection of matters is that Mr. Bucket is attending by video. Is that correct?
that's right.
No. Yes, he is, yes.
Yes.
My time estimate for Mr. Akbar is 3.5 hours, which I believe is what it was. Hang on, let me just count it. 1.5. 3.5. It remains 3.5 hours. So if I start tomorrow at 10, assuming we start 10:03, that should take me to 2:30. Let's allow for inaccuracy in the time estimate. 2:45. I think that we can be finished with Mr. Bucket by 4:30 tomorrow.
Is that... You happy with that? What's the position with Mr. Bucket? Where is he? Do we know?
I believe he's in London or Singapore. I think it's London.
Mr. Bucket is in...
So I think for him, generally later in the day is
So
better
later in
than
the day, it's not going to be a problem for him. If we do have to sit on a bit tomorrow.
I intend to finish Mr. Bucket tomorrow.
Right. Well, that's good, because if he's in London, we can't really start him first thing
exactly,
on Wednesday.
That's right. That's why I'm signalling 4:30. But in signalling 4:30, I should be straightforward. That's not because I think Mr. Bucket is going to go up to 2.5 hours.
Well, would you like...
It's in case Mr. I think we're fine, Your Honour, actually.
Right. Would you want to start at 9:30 with Mr.
I think
Akbar?
it'd be better to say we allow for a 4:30 finish, and I think that's it. I think we'll be fine on that basis.
All right. Well, that's a representation upon which we're all relying,
Okay,
Mr. Bickford-Smith.
Royce got trust in Rogerson. I better pack my bags. Thank you.
All right. Well, unless there's anything else, we'll now adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow again. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Sheikh. Your obligations are
Thank you.
concluded. Thank you. We'll now adjourn.